Hello and welcome back to Aubrey Books and Coffee. Please grab your favorite beverage of choice and join me. Mine's going to be water because even though it's the end of August, it is still in the 90s, everybody. Oh my gosh, it is so warm. It is so warm. I am so ready for the fall to get here and the spiced goodness and pumpkin goodness and cooler weather and leaves falling and pumpkin patches and all things fall. I need me some fall, y'all. But hey, the end of the month means we get to review some stats, review some books, see if there's any new ones in here that strike your fancy. So let's begin. First, those beautiful stats, because I love me some stats. And this time, I'm actually bringing you some graphics, so enjoy. And I apologize for any noises. Cats, I cannot control them. So starting off, there were 33 total books this month. 32 were actually finished, so that gives you a little preview. There were a total 12,466 pages read. Remember, I do a lot of audiobook. Fantasy, of course, was the main genre. Audiobook was the main format. I had an even split pretty much of authors I've read from before and brand new authors to me. So that was kind of cool. I had a total of 2 2-stars, 17 3-stars, 6 4-stars, 7 5-stars. That's the highest for the year, you guys. I've never had 7 5-stars in 1 month before. It was a fabulous reading month and of course 1 DNF, but this gave me an average reading of 3.6. Again, the highest for the year. So exciting. I had 21 books that I borrowed, 11 books that I already owned, and only 1 did I actually purchase. So bless the library. Hoopla and Libby, I love you. Hoopla was the one I used the most this month, and I had 4 NetGalleys, which now has my rating at 70%. Still not at the 80% they recommend, but good ones keep coming out that I want to grab. I also did 13 that were series and 20 standalones. So again, I thought it was a very, very good and full reading month. And I had a wonderful time in Battleathon that Mel put on. It was a fabulous readathon. This month next month are several that are going to be going on. I'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. But I'm probably going to take a break. I always take a break after I go all out for a readathon the month before. Let's dive into some books now, shall we? Starting off with Colleen Cobles' What We Hide. This one I got from NetGalley. I ended up giving it a 3-star. I loved the dynamics of the sisters. I love that there was a murder mystery. There was a campus setting, which is always fun. There were some heavier topics that were, kind of dealt with and talked about. But all in all, it was an enjoyable read. It just wasn't anything earth-shattering. I kind of figured out what was going to happen before it happened, which isn't a bad thing. It makes me feel smart, but it also kind of makes me feel like not as much as I wanted. But I do enjoy Colleen Coble as a person. I've been to a couple of her events and I think she's a beautiful person, but I just wasn't quite drawn into this story as much as I wanted to, but a solid read. Then I finished Cursed Princess Club. This I gave 5 stars. It was so cute. I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was adorable. This was the first one in the series. I am definitely continuing the series. You had basically 3 sisters and they are like beautiful princesses, right? Except there's a bit of a twist. I don't want to give it away because I didn't see it coming, and it absolutely cracked me up from the very beginning, where you have, the father's going to wake up his beautiful daughters. And the first one, of course, has animals helping her dress, right? Very Snow White-like. And then the second one has flowers blooming everywhere because that's just what happens. And then he goes into the third daughter's room and there's a wild possum on her head. So, if that tells you anything, it's got some wild rides in this graphic novel. It is absolutely hilarious. I loved it. The art was amazing. I highly recommend. Then I finished The Atlas Complex. Now, this one I gave 3 stars, and it was a generous 3 stars on my part. it really wasn't for me. And when I looked at Goodreads, because I like to make sure and not just feel bad, I was not alone. It was very disappointing. It felt a lot like the author was wanting to make this story super complicated when it really didn't need to be. That's not why we loved the Atlas 6, but it kept getting more and more complicated. If you remember from my review of the second one, it felt unnecessarily convoluted. This one just continued that. In fact, made it a little bit more. At times it was even boring, and I'm glad it's over. I finished that series, but not the greatest. Then I finished Dead of Winter. Another Darcy Coates that kind of let me down a little bit. I gave it 3 stars. Some people swear by this. They absolutely love this book. This is a very cabin out in the middle of nowhere, a snowstorm. You're trapped in there and there's a murderer. So it was interesting as far as the setting. A lot of the character dynamics I really enjoyed. But at the end there, when they were tying it all together, it fell flat for me. It felt very, very flat. Again, I guessed what was going to happen before it did, and I was disappointed that was the way the author chose to go. It just wasn't for me. It just kind of let me down after all this hype, and the ride that I was enjoying all of a sudden just felt kind of flat. Then I finished Eruption, and this is the one I had told you about in the game where you had Michael Crichton starting this manuscript, unfortunately passing away. His widow grabs the manuscript and asks James Patterson if he would like to co-author this book, and James Patterson agreed. So this is an amazing mix of both authors. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was wonderful. It's basically going to be exactly what you think it's going to be, with Eruption being, volcano. It's in Hawaii. And there's some military components to it and stuff. So don't go in expecting some super amazing mystical surprise, because you won't get that. But if you're wanting just a base thriller that shows the suspense of the politics and the military and what to do if you are stuck on this island, because remember, the water, once it starts getting lava, starts to boil. So it's not safe being in the water either. So what do you do? And so that kind of a thing. But that was very interesting. It was very well written. I had a good time with it, obviously. Just don't go into it expecting anything super earth-shattering is all. Lower those expectations, and I think you'll enjoy the ride. Kind of like a good summer blockbuster movie. It's never going to win an Oscar, but it's a good, summer blockbuster movie. Then I finished Immortal Dark. This was also a NetGalley, and the cover looked creepily cool. I was really excited to get this one. It started out so good. You had one sister searching for another sister, and so she goes to this academy, and the academy has vampires because naturally it had really good humor in it, and about 2/3 of it I really enjoyed. It's the ending that really lost me. It just kept going on and on and on. And I felt like if it was about 100 pages smaller, maybe it wrapped up a little bit quicker, I could have enjoyed it more. But where it was at, I just got bored at the end. And so, yeah, I'm probably not going to continue. I'm probably not going to do anything. The author tried to leave it on like a cliffhanger, but it was at that point where I'm like, okay. But that was just me. Not every book's for every person. Definitely feel free to check it out. Then I finished Beneath These Cursed Stars. This, of course, I was so excited to get on NetGalley. This is Lexi Ryan, the one who's done These Hollow Vows. I was so excited to get a preview into this. I still love the writing style of this author. I had a good time. I gave it 3 stars because in places it really dragged, and that bummed me out because there were so many parts of it. Now, make sure you read that initial duology first, because it talks about that duology a lot in this book. Even though this is going to be a totally separate duology, they reference the characters. So you do need to make sure you've already had that. But yeah, I really just kind of expected more. But it got to where, especially when you were following one sister's kind of POV, and we'll say sister's POV. I don't want to give anything away. May or may not actually be the sister is what I'm saying. During that, I was bored. It started off really cool. I enjoyed the premise. I enjoyed the what could be a romance. And then I just got bored. I got really, really bored again. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I just don't have the attention span I need to or what. But I just don't want things to drag on. I guess I am definitely a plot-focused book reader. I enjoy when there's movement of the plot versus characters just sitting around talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. I need something to happen. But it was still an enjoyable ride, and I do recommend when this comes out, picking it up. The next NetGalley one that I got was Celestial Academy, another academic setting. You know, I love me a good academic setting. This one I also gave a 3-star to. It was very enjoyable. It started off again like a bang. It started off so strong and was so good. I enjoyed the friendships. I enjoyed the powers that they have and are playing around with. There's even a romance that starts to get kind of going. But then in the middle, it got very convoluted and complicated, and more rules were thrown at us about the magic and this world. It started feeling kind of rushed in places. So I'm probably not going to continue this series, to be honest, because at the end, I wasn't bored, but at the end, it felt like, did I truly follow along with this whole thing? I feel like I missed chunks. Even when I would go back and reread, I kept feeling like I was missing something. I don't know if it's something that's going to be revealed in the second book or what, but it was enough that I was like, there's lots of books to read out there. This just obviously was not for me to have lost track of what was going on by the end. So feel free to check it out. It just wasn't for me. Then I finished House of Ash and Shadow. This one, oh my gosh, I loved it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was so good. Now keep in mind, it's very YA. So don't go into it expecting the same level of fantasy and things that you get from other romanticises. This is YA. It's meant to be young adult, okay? Not new adult, young adult. So expect that. But if you go into it with wanting some of that childlike innocence and naivete and the writing style to be really kind of young, you can go just for the popcorn of it and just have fun, because this was such a popcorn read for me. I loved Fallon. I hated that she was cursed, where if anybody touches her, she's in intense pain, except this one guy who can touch her and she doesn't feel pain, but he seems to hate her. And oh, by the way, he's got a twin brother, and the twin brother likes her but can't touch her. So yeah, like there's a little bit of a fun triangle and dynamic with that, and some secrets that are revealed I'm not going to give away because that's half the fun of this story, but there's more to it, and another school setting because she ends up going to an academy here to learn some powers. So it really was a really cute and enjoyable ride, and I am absolutely continuing this series. Then I finished another, this time instead of NetGalley, it was a GoodReads giveaway, my first GoodReads giveaway win, which was so exciting. Thank you, GoodReads. Between a Rock and a Cowboy. This I gave 3 stars. It's very obviously a cowboy romance. There's nothing wrong with that. And it even throws in an extra dynamic that I thought was so cool, which, and this isn't a spoiler, but basically the cowboy of this title has a father who suffered a stroke, and the love interest that's coming in is a therapist to help the father work on his speech and work on movement and things like that, and how hard it is for the whole family to reconcile this man that's always been strong and taking care of this ranch and taking care of his kids to now be stuck in a bed, and the father is depressed and upset about it. And it just really goes through all those gamut of emotions. So prepare yourselves for that. It is a very hard amount of emotion that comes at you in this book at times, but it was also a sweet romance and a sweet ride. And there's even a Hatfields and McCoys kind of, back and forth that happens between the families and stuff. So it was okay. I wasn't blown away. It was nothing earth shattering again, but it was a good romance, and I'm grateful to have won this book. So again, thank you, GoodReads. Then I finished White Hot Kiss. I love me an Armen Trout. I gave this one a 3 stars though, because the ending made me upset. That's what it boils down to. So again, this is only book 1. I am definitely continuing the series. Layla is basically half warden and half demon, and she has this ability to tag other demons so that the wardens can hunt them down and kill them before they hurt humans. And she basically runs into, which I kind of hinted at this a little bit in my vlog, you'll have to go watch that for full review, but she basically runs into a demon who is really hot and is actually causing her to rethink her life and truths that she's been told told her whole life and to kind of relook at the world. I was so mad at the ending, though. I understand cliffhangers are important and you want to get us to pick up the next book, but dadgummit. And it's just one of those where it was an ending that is pulling me, and I can see why the author did it, but is also making me like, decisions could have been different and were pretty obvious, I thought, to make that would have prevented this, but whatever. But it was something that needed to happen to, I guess, bring about the second book. So regardless, you know what I'm trying to say here. It was just kind of frustrating and a little maddening. And so that's why it got the 3-star. Then I finished Psyche and Eros. This I gave 4 stars. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this. Again, this is fully reviewed in the vlog. Essentially, it's the story that you've heard from before with Greek mythology with a little bit of a twist, a little artistic license. I didn't like the animal cruelty that happened in it, and so I was kind of bummed in the clip where I talked about that a little bit. But otherwise, it was really good. It has the same kind of voice as the Song of Achilles, so keep that in mind. If that wasn't up your alley, this might not be either. And because it was a 4-star and a gorgeous edition, it's up for grabs when we do our drawing when we hit 700 subscribers. So do keep that in mind to request it if you are the name that is drawn from that. Then I finished The Last Blood Carver. I don't know what I thought this book was going to be, but it wasn't what I read. I gave this one 3 stars. It was very interesting, the friendships that developed. It was very interesting what was going on with this family that were trying to uncover the secret of what happened to their father and who killed him. And this blood carver having this ability that she's supposed to pretend she doesn't have. And just, it was just weird. And there was supposed to be a romance that I just wasn't getting. I wasn't getting the sparks between the 2 characters. It felt forced to me. It felt like it was just supposed to be a position of convenience, not actual attraction. It just, I don't know, it just did not work for me. And so then, especially when the ending happened, I was very disappointed in that ending. I'm not going to lie, very disappointed. And so I walked away just kind of like, I'll give it a 3-star because I did enjoy the writing and most of the story, but there were some real jarring moments that made me think it was going to be a 2-star. So just keep that in mind when you pick this one up. Then I finished If We Were Villains. This was our book club pick. I did not expect it to be this book. I gave it 3 stars. It was a solid read. I did enjoy myself. I love anytime I get to read with somebody else. So I really enjoyed our discussions in Discord with this book, and it was really enjoyable for that reason. I didn't expect it to be so much Shakespeare. I probably should have, but I did not see that coming. And I didn't expect, because it revolved so much around Shakespeare and Shakespearean plays, that the entire book is broken down like a play where it's got acts and scenes. And that's how you read the book. But I did really enjoy the interaction of this friend group. I enjoyed the mystery of who hurt this person and what's going to happen. There's a little bit of a time jump, just so you know. You'll have a present day and you'll have some past. So just keep that in mind. If that bothers you, this may not be the book for you. But otherwise, it was overall enjoyable. I had a good time. I love my book club peeps. You know who you are. Then I finished That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon. This has been recommended to me. This was one that was on a TBR a couple months ago and I never got to. I always carry them forward. If you don't see me reviewing them here at the end of each month, know that they don't fall off. I just keep passing them forward. This was a physical read, so it takes me longer sometimes to get to those because I am the world's slowest reader in physical form. But I finally finished it and I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was enjoyable. It's a little spicy. And I really did enjoy the demon that Cinnamon has, matched up with and is trying to help on this quest. I enjoyed the antics they got into and the characters they met along the way. There was even a kind of piratey feeling going on at one point. So I did have a good time. I really, really did. And I only gave it a 3-star because there's not a lot of plot, okay? It's meant to be this silly kind of romance with a side of fantasy plot. And again, being a plot girly, I wanted more. Then I ended up finishing Six of Sorrow. This one was the Once Upon a Book Club pick. I gave a full vlog in that video. You'll have to check it out to see everything. Just suffice to say, I started off saying this felt very horror light, which a lot of people said they never heard before, so maybe I made it up. Maybe I heard it somewhere, I'm just not remembering. But basically, it didn't feel too scary. It just kind of had scary on the outsides. It felt more like it was about the friendship and what was going on with that friendship group with a side of horror. As the book continued, you still had the friendship there. You got a little more of that horror, but then it started going off on some wild acid trip. I am not even kidding. It was ridiculous. So at that point, I checked out. I'm not going to lie. I didn't care anymore. I just was like, this is just really weird, really bizarre, not making a lot of sense to me. It feels like it's just to try to be scary or try to do shock value. Didn't really feel like it was adding to the story or even adding to the friendship dynamic like I would have loved to have seen. So for me, I was like, 2 stars. I'm sorry, 2 stars. My least favorite one probably for the whole month. So yeah. Then I finished Broken Bonds. My second, I guess, because Cursed Princess Club was my second 5-star of the month. And I did an entire vlog on this series, so I'm just going to cover them very briefly when I review them here. Oh my gosh, I loved this series so much. So much. I became absolutely obsessed with them. I first heard about this book from Cassidy on Covers with Cassidy's channel. And then just, like I said, completely fell in love with it after the first one. I found myself smiling all the time. I found myself wanting desperately to pick up the next one. I found myself drawn to that it's super expensive set that's like $600 that I can so not afford. I love Oleander. I love Oleander's 5 guys that, she's supposed to be bonded to. And I'm not going to ruin anything in this series because you need to experience it for yourself. But there's subplots as well. Just keep in mind the whole, not premise, but the trope it's under is reverse harem. So keep that in mind. The first book actually had very little spice at all. It was the other ones that started to pick up the spice. And I talk about that more in that vlog. If you want to go watch it to kind of break down each book, you can kind of see what might be your comfort level with that. But I did have a great time reading it and highly recommend it to everybody that I talked to. Then I finished Just Last Night. Now, this one I gave a 2-star also. It started off so good. I was so excited. Eve's bestie Suzie, basically something happens, and so it kind of rocks Eve's world, and she's kind of trying to come to grips with her new reality and her new life, and this old boyfriend and Susie's brother who seems like a total jerk, and like there's this whole thing. And it started off really good, and it pulled me in, and I loved the humor. But then it keeps going and going and going. And I think it was just 100 pages too much because it became very repetitive in the things that were happening. Small details would change. So you'd have them going to a donut shop instead of a restaurant, but otherwise literally everything else was the same. It felt very, very repetitive. And so for me, I just got really bored. And at the end, I didn't want to sound heartless, but I felt like, oh, Eve, get over it. I know that sounds absolutely horrible, but it did. It felt like it just needed to end a little bit sooner or have something more dynamic happening inside the story for me. Then I finished Reckless. This was the sequel to Powerless. I did actually talk about this in my weekly vlog as well. Not a lot happens. And that seems to be the general consensus from everybody. It's not just me who's always wanting the plot to be popping. Not a lot actually really happens in this book, but it does set stuff up for the third one, so I can appreciate that. It's the curse of the second book, but I still enjoyed my ride, which is why it got a 3-star, and I am continuing the series, and I do recommend picking it up. Then I finished The Raven King. This one I gave a 3-star. This is the final one in those Raven Boys series. I had a good time, except towards the ending, it started getting more and more complex and convoluted. I got confused. I got really lost to where by the time we do the final wrap up at the very, very end, I am sorry to say I didn't care. I really didn't care. I'm like literally at this point, I don't care what happens to Blue. I don't care what happens to anybody because I am bored and I just want it over. So I do hate that this is how it wrapped up. And when I went on GoodReads to look to see if it was just me and maybe I had just reached my peak of what I wanted to read that wasn't Broken Bonds, I found out that it wasn't just me, that a lot of people found it very convoluted and felt like the ending wasn't satisfying for having us go so long in this series to now have it end like this. So I'm glad it wasn't just me. Just keep that in mind when you start this series, or if you're thinking about starting it. So many good books inside this series, but some of them are a bit of a letdown, at least from where I'm sitting. Then I finished Savage Bonds. Of course, it got 5 stars. This is the second book in that Broken Bond series. So good. Then I finished Phantoms. This one wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be, so I'm kind of grateful for that. I do like Mia Dean Koontz. I gave it a solid 3 stars. I appreciated the fact that a sister is adopting her younger sister, brings her to her town to raise her basically, and when they get back in town, nobody's there. There's food and silverware sitting out and bags just sitting in the street, but like the people are gone. It's very Roanoke kind of feeling, and it's very creepy. And then slowly she starts to find a couple of other people from this town that are coming into town that are like, what happened to everybody? And where it lost me is when we finally find out why everybody disappeared and that this entity is now coming for them. That's where it lost me, because I didn't like what the author chose to use as that entity. I think if we had kept it a mystery, it would have been so much spookier and better, or if we had chosen something else. But the way that this author went just felt kind of a letdown to me, kind of a easy way out to explain everything, and it just kind of disappointed me, I guess. So, but it was still a good read, so I do recommend it. Just keep in mind, you may or may not like the bad guy in this. Then I finished Slaying the Vampire Conqueror. This is another one that Cassidy recommended. I thought it was really good. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed myself. Didn't fall in love with the characters, so not keeping the book on my shelf, but I did have a good time. I enjoyed that it was a standalone story, and I enjoyed that it's in the world of Nyaxia, which if you've read Carissa Broadbent's Serpents in the Wings of Night series, that's the world of Nyaxia. So you'll kind of understand where the main guy lead is coming from when he talks about Nyaxia and stuff in this book. So I do recommend it. If you've read the other 2, you might enjoy this. Same kind of writing style, just 2 totally different characters we haven't seen before. But I thought it was a really good read. I enjoyed myself. Then I finished A Promise of Fire. This is the first one I read from Amanda Bouchette. I'm probably saying that wrong. I am so sorry. I really wanted to read this author's work before going to a Polycon in April of next year, because I've not read anything before, and this author's going to be there, so I may want a fun signed copy. This was a good ride. I gave it a 3 star. I am going to be continuing the series, though. I was pulled in. I love the snark. I love the banter. I love the stabby female lead. I love the one-horse trope that was going on at times. I loved kind of how she hates him and he's like trying to win her over. I thought that was really cute. I think the reason it got a 3 star for me is I didn't expect there to be quite so much Greek mythology going on, like Greek gods being involved in this. I don't know why. The cover shows a flipping trident on there. I should have known, but I didn't. So yeah, for me, it was kind of a letdown, because when it started going heavier into those details, I just was like, care less about that. I wanted more of just the 2 and what was going on with them. Then I finished Blood Bonds. This is book 3, 5 stars. It was so good, so precious. Love these guys. Then I finished The Name of the Star. This one I gave 3 stars. I do like Maureen Johnson's style of writing. That part was enjoyable. Interesting ties to Jack the Ripper. Little on the creepy side. There is a bit of a reveal with the main character, and we'll say an ability that she has. And so she meets up with other people who have a similar ability and has to learn how to use that for, we'll say, the betterment of the world and herself. And so that part was actually very interesting, and I enjoyed reading all of that. It got a 3 star though, and I'm not continuing the series because at times it felt very slow progress. Again, the kind of just meeting back in the dorm room to have a snack and talk. Now we're going to go do something exciting. Meeting back in the dorm room to have a snack and talk. Now we're going to go do so very, very slow progress on that plot. I understand it is a series, and that's why the author chose to do that. But I found out from Kim, my friend over there at Whimsical Narratives, little plug there, that apparently Maureen Johnson has not in like 10 years finished this series and doesn't seem to have plans to do so. So since it's not even a completed series, I'm out. I am out. I am not going to be continuing this series for that reason. So you may or may not want to pick it up, knowing the author may never finish this. So just a heads up there. Then I finished Vampire Academy. So I gave it a 3-star. It's very YA, which I knew that going into it, obviously about vampires. I enjoyed the relationship between the bodyguard and the princess. I thought that was very precious, very sweet. I think the romance in there that's going on with we'll say, a trainer and somebody, and a bad boy at the academy and somebody, also was very exciting and spicy and interesting to watch. But I don't know, something about it, maybe because it was written so long ago, it just didn't draw me in enough to want to continue the series. I know there's a whole slew of Vampire Academy books, but I just don't have a desire to continue it. So I think this is the only one I'm going to read and review, but definitely continue it, and I recommend it for you all. Then I finished Forced Bonds. Of course, I gave book 4 a 5-star. Oh my gosh, love them boys. Then I finished Tragic Bonds because I could not possibly stop reading once I had started back up. Also 5 stars for book 5. Then I finished Lore Olympus because I needed to be able to review books for you that wasn't just this series. And for Lore Olympus, of course, I gave it, this is volume 6, I gave it 5 stars. It was, again, fantastic. I love Persephone. I love Hades. I love them together so much. And we get to hear a little bit more from Minth's point of view. If you know, you know. Otherwise, I'm not going to spoil who that is or what's going on with that. You need to read the series to understand that. And it's interesting because Zeus is ticked off now at Persephone, and so it's starting to get really real up in there. So I'm just enjoying the ride. I'm having a good time. Then I finished Guild. This is the first book in the Plated Prisoner series. Everybody warned me it's really dark. Just keep that in mind. This first book really wasn't bad. It really wasn't bad. There's things referenced, yes, but it really wasn't as dark as everybody was warning me. So I'm guessing that's future books. There actually was no real spice on the page. In the very, very beginning, it talks about something that's happening in front of her while she's in a cage, but nothing happening to her. And then as we go from that opening scene, no spice at all. So I'm guessing it's further in the series that this happens. But this book felt very kind of innocent and clean. I gave it 4 stars. I really had a good time just following the main character and what was going on, and then her interaction with people and finding out why it is she's so precious to the king. And it was just very intriguing finding out these little secrets and stuff along the way. And I enjoyed it a lot. I am 100% going to be continuing the series. So it's right here on my shelf. I have the first book turned backwards because if I end up selling them, it'll be all 3 together. And right now, as a 4-star, I'm not keeping them. So we'll see if the other 2 win me over. And I know there's more after that, but the 2 that I have on my shelf. So we'll see. More to follow on that. Then I finished Unbroken Bonds. This was the last book in this series that I had just been obsessed with. This one I actually gave a 4 stars to, if you can believe it. It's the only one in the series I did. And that's only because the ending wasn't as epic as I was expecting. You're having 6 books in this series, and you're sprinkling hints about a deeper plot or thing that you need to know about going on besides just these, this group of 5 guys and girl getting to know each other. And then you take us on this wild ride, and you're beefing up and beefing up and beefing up this important information that's been secret all along. So again, I can't say more details than that because it would completely spoil things that get revealed in book 2. And then we don't have an epic showdown. We just kind of, all right, and now we'll go about our day. Are you kidding me? This is our ending to the 6-book series. So I was very disappointed. I wanted an epic battle. I wanted something incredible and earth-shattering and life-changing to happen at the end that would then move forward, that in your imagination or in fan fiction of what was going to happen next. And instead it's just, and now we go about our day. And it's just, what? No! So because of that, I was so disappointed in the ending. And so that's why I got the 4-star. But I still absolutely love the ride. absolutely want to own all those books and beautiful edition on my shelf at some point. Until then, paperback. And I had such a good time, and I cannot recommend this series enough. And it's not that the ending was horrible. I have to stress that in case you're like, well, the ending sounds terrible, I don't think I will. No. The ending is satisfying as far as wrapping everything up, and it's satisfying as far as you feel some warm and fuzzies, okay? It's just a very simple ending, I guess, is the way to put it. It's just a very simple ending, and I expected something more dynamic. I hope that made more sense, because I don't want to dissuade you from doing this series. I loved this series, and if you're okay with reverse harems, you'll love this series, and you need to check it out. Then I finished nothing else. I DNF'd. So that was 32. The 33rd book is a DNF, and that was Sons of Darkness. I tried this one. It has looked so gorgeous. Every time I go into Barnes & Noble, every time I go into Books A Million, it looks absolutely gorgeous with those sprayed gorgeous edges. And so I really wanted to try to give it a try. And I had to DNF it. It was basically boring, like really, really boring in the beginning. And there was typos happening that were weird. So normally typos don't go on my radar because I'm not the best speller. I'm not the best with punctuation. So like I don't even notice half the time when something's weird. But in this instance, within the first chapter, you're hearing the story of a brother and sister, and basically they're meeting up with sister's, we'll say, significant other. And when she jumps into significant other's arms, it says that she starts kissing, but uses brother's name's neck. So obviously it was a typo. Obviously, so like if her brother's Sam and her significant other's Ryan, it talks about Tierra running and jumping into Ryan's arms and then starts kissing Sam's neck. Typo, obviously typo, but it was weird. And a book that has been so out there published and all over it was just weird. I must have read that paragraph like 17 times. I'm like, there's no way this hasn't been caught. There's no way. I'm the only one that's going, what the heck? Like, this doesn't even make sense. But it was there. So I don't know. And then it was talking a lot about violence that was happening to women. And when I went into GoodReads to read some of the reviews that didn't have spoilers, they warned it gets even worse than what you're seeing in the beginning. So I'm like, no, it's going real slow, kind of boring, a lot of info dumping, weird typos that are weirding me out. And then now I'm going to be subjected to a whole lot of violence with women. So I'm good. We'll call it. So I did DNF that one. And I think that brings me to the end of August. I did get some walking in, as you can see here. I blame the heat for not getting in nearly as many miles as I needed to. So yeah, hopefully when it cools off, right? When it cools off, I'll be able to do more walking and hopefully get to Oregon. But regardless, I am enjoying being more active and trying to still hit those 10,000 steps every day when I can. And I hope you all had a great August and didn't get too hot. And I will see you tomorrow for a new fun game. Take care, everybody.